Welcome to Satsang.
Hello, Vishrant. Can you please speak about what does enlightenment feel like?
There's an absence of the one that's interested. When awareness becomes aware of itself, when beingness becomes aware of itself and stays aware of itself, the ego drops. It's clearly seen by the mind to not be who you are and is not relevant anymore. It is still there to some degree because it's required just to be able to operate in the material world. If someone calls the name Vishrant, there needs to be a recognition that they're talking to me. And so there'll be a turning. But there's nobody here. This whole understanding or idea or belief system that there's a somebody here is just that, a belief system. When awareness becomes aware of itself and stays aware of itself, there is a profound absence of the somebody. And so the thing that is noticed immediately is that absence. When awareness is aware of itself, there is a sense of non-duality, a sense of everything being one and everything being self. And so the ego and the mind doesn't have reference points to understand this. It can only know this through the direct experience of awareness being aware of itself, either in Satori or in enlightenment. Most human beings think they are a somebody that has been somewhere and is going somewhere. And that's just not what we are. You take away your imagination, you take away your future projections and your past, which is all imagined, and who are you really? What is actually here? Now, if awareness turns back to itself, you know yourself as everything. But there's also a sense of nothing here. People get interested in it because they hear it is freedom. What they might not understand is what it is freedom from. And the freedom is only relative to the mind itself, because we've always been beingness. We can't be anything other than beingness. And so everybody has been at their final destination always. But the belief that comes from the mind that it is a somebody drops away. It is beautiful, but there's no real interest in that either. It just is, isness. All the comparisons disappear. There is just silence and stillness. And it is freedom from the mind itself, from the ego itself. The mind is a prison, the bars of which are made of fear. And so enlightenment is out of that prison. Some people refer to it as home, or awakening, coming home. The funniest thing is you've already and always been home, just simply not aware of it. So the endeavor for the seeker in this life is to turn awareness or beingness back to itself and know self as truth. And this is the best game in town. Freedom from the mind, freedom from samsara, the cycle of birth, life, and death. This is the ultimate. Are there any questions, statements, or challenges to this teaching today?
The first question is as follows. Is there anything that you miss about having an ego?
There's not even the consideration of it, let alone the missing of it. It was never real. And it was just a problem-solving device that dreamt that it was real, and it is not. It dreamt it had a past, and it did not. It dreamt it had a future, and it does not. The ego is just a dream. Without imagination, it can't exist. You try finding the ego, you won't be able to find it because it's not there. It seems to be there, but it is not. It's made up of reference points based on past experience, projected to the future, and belief systems, all of which are imagined. Who are you really? What is this that is aware of the mind?
How can a seeker get a glimpse into this awareness on awareness?
In my experience, self-inquiry worked, asking the question, who am I, or who's aware? Two different types of self-inquiry. The first type is a more Zen Buddhist type, where you ask the question, who am I? And you answer the question, and then you discount the answer. And you continue questioning and answering until there's nothing left. And this puts you in the right frame of mind for awareness to turn back to itself. The second type is the Advaita Vedanta type of self-inquiry, which is asking the question, who's aware, and not answering it, or following the eye back to its source. Because there is something that is aware. No matter what, there is something that is aware. And it is this that's aware that can discover itself. And so a glimpse can occur. A person gets a glimpse or a satori of their true nature. This doesn't mean that much in itself. It is simply an invitation to do the work on the mind to come home. All obstacles need to be removed. And this is where it helps to find someone who's awake to sit with, because they'll help point out the obstacles and help you remove them while supplying a Buddha field that you can find your own true nature in. The fastest way, the best way to wake up is to be in the presence of someone who is already awake.
Is Satori necessary for enlightenment? And is it a good indicator of progress?
Not necessarily. People can have Satori's by taking drugs, by simply walking on the beach. It can happen at any time. Awareness can get a glimpse of itself. And so it's not necessarily a advancement measurement stick. A mind that will support enlightenment is a better way to look at it. A mind that has higher consciousness, which means a mind that is actually not reacting anymore, not resisting anymore, not contracting anymore, but a mind that is actually in acceptance of life and responds to life rather than unconsciously reacts.
Next, we have a question from Neil.
Hello, Neil.
Hello, Vishrant. So, uh, I wanted to know, I've heard you say that in the past you had a successful business and you were making a lot of money, but you left all that behind in the search of truth. So why didn't you go for the middle path, which Osho called Zorba the Buddha, where you don't have to disconnect from all the pleasures of the past and at the same time seek enlightenment? So why didn't you go for that? And my second question is, do you believe that life exists, life continues to exist even after death? Because I've heard you say Osho left his body. You never say Osho died. So do you believe that life continues even after death?
Okay, Neil, we'll start with one question. I'm not good at remembering two at once.
All right.
So the first question was is you don't need to walk away from what you're doing. I did because I'd become a war machine. I was a publisher and I was in opposition to a lot of other publishers. I had a large company and it really was a war machine. And I had become a war machine. I'd closed down so much of myself. I was so defended. I needed to walk away, to find my own heart, to open up. And I did do that. I walked away from it. I gave it all away, locked everything, because I felt that it was more important that I found my own heart and found enlightenment than anything else on this plane. But after 4 years of traveling around Australia, basically as a bum, hitchhiking, I decided I wanted to serve heart, and I went into service. And I went back to school and I trained as a naturopath and as a psychotherapist, so I would have tools that I could help people with. But I don't think people need to give up what they're doing necessarily. It depends on how much of a handicap that puts them in when it comes to opening up. In my business, I was just too closed. I needed to take the armor off. And the only way that I could find to do that was to hand it all in.
Mhm. Right. And mhm.
The second question, Osho is not dead. His body's dead. But who he really is and who I am also and who you are also was never born and cannot die, because we are pure awareness. We are pure beingness, and it is touched by absolutely nothing. So even though Osho's body died when he was 58 in 1990, he can't be touched because he was living as beingness. This,
Right.
yeah, there is another side to it though. Osho died in 1990, but his teachings have carried on. They haven't stopped. I believe he has more sannyasins in the world today than he did when he died. His work is being continued by sannyasins who are awake throughout the world. And so you can't say he really died, but you couldn't say Gautama the Buddha died either, or any of the other awakened ones. Not really. But you can't actually die. Your body can, your mind can, but who you really are cannot. That's
Right.
not possible.
So would you say that they're still watching us? They're aware they're here around and watching us in some other dimension? Would you say that?
I don't know. Look, that's not my experience, but I don't know. And you've got to sit with that. You've got to say, well, I don't know, because you just don't.
Right. Right.
Look, if I see him when I die, or I see him before I die, I'll say hello from you.
Right.
Oh.
All right.
There is such a beauty, Neil, in not knowing. The reason we want to know basically is we want to control things. And that's a part of the survival mechanism. In not knowing, we've let go of control. We're quite free. And when we were little kids, up to 4 or 5, we lived in wonderment because we lived in not knowing. So, I don't know.
All right. Thank you, Vishrant.
Thank you, Neil.
Next, we have a question from Kavita.
Hello, Kavita.
Hi, Vishrant. I wanted to know, does fear disappear completely after enlightenment?
Yes. Yes, I haven't experienced any fear in 22 years.
You don't even know what fear is.
I remember what fear is, and I teach people who have fear, but I haven't experienced any fear in 22 years.
Thanks, Vishrant. I think that's one of the most attractive.
Yes.
For me, at least, it's one of the most attractive things about enlightenment.
Well, it's called a baya, a fearlessness. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Susha would like to ask a question.
Hello, Susha.
Hi, Vishrant. So, Vishrant, I think what I've done in my life has always been attracted to super consciousness, but not done the work to get to higher consciousness.
Yeah.
Would you please talk a little more about that?
Yeah, well, super consciousness or enlightenment sounds wonderful to the ego because it sounds like freedom. It sounds like the end of suffering, the end of pain, the coming home. And so the ego is very attracted to that because it's basically programmed to avoid pain and chase pleasure. And so it's attracted to enlightenment so it can feel good. But it's not going to be possible unless there is a mind in the body that supports enlightenment, which is higher consciousness. A mind that supports enlightenment is a mind that is equanimous, a mind that is not contracting against the world, not attracting attention to itself, a mind that is actually at peace, a mind that is willing to just rest in beingness no matter what is happening, whether things are going right or things are going wrong. A mind that doesn't react when attacked, but stays even. And this is what people don't want to do. They don't want to do the work. And hence there isn't that many people who are awake. Many people want enlightenment, but very few people are willing to pay the price for enlightenment. And that is to do the work on the mind, to prepare it, to support awareness on awareness, to support enlightenment. And that work is important. It's done in mystery schools quite often. I attended the Osho Mystery School in America and also in India, in Pune. And in this mystery school, basically, I had teachers take me apart, show me where my obstacles were so I could remove them, help me find a way that my mind could rest, even though it was under fire. And so this is the work, the undoing, usually, of a heap of belief systems that keep us contracted against the world.
Yeah, this is a big realization for me, that the desire to go to super consciousness or be enlightened was another desire to escape pain rather than doing the work.
Yeah, for a lot of people, that's what it is. They're trying to get away from some form of suffering, and that'll take you halfway, maybe. But to go further, there needs to be this love affair that develops between the mind and truth and the mind and heart. And in that love affair, the mind becomes willing to do whatever it takes to facilitate enlightenment, to facilitate truth.
Yes.
It lays itself down in surrender.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susha. It's a funny game. Thousands of people get involved as becoming seekers because they want something better for themselves. But very few of them really want to do the work, and that includes healing the wounds of the heart, undoing the mind so it will support enlightenment. But very few people want to do the work, which is the problem. Insight that comes through Satori is simply an invitation to do the work.
Yeah, totally realizing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Susha.
Thank you very much.
The next question has been written by a viewer. Hi Vishrant. Without reference points, what is going in and being out in the world?
Okay, so awareness can be in on itself, and that is enlightenment. To operate in the material world, awareness also needs to be out. Because if awareness is just in, you can't operate in the material world. That's not possible. It also needs to be out. And so it comes out through the mind and through the senses of the mind and through the thinking of the mind. And it can operate then in the material world. Without awareness being out, there is no operation in the material world. And so when someone who's awake sits, they're gone. When they come out again, awareness is still on itself, but now they're out in the world, and they have those reference points in the world that they've developed over a lifetime that allow them to operate in the world. So they're in the world, but they're not of the world. They have truly become Zorba the Buddha.
Can you control the percentage of awareness you have out and in all the time?
Yes. Awareness in, nothing. Awareness in and out, the further it goes out, the more there can be operations in the world. The less out, the more difficult it is. And so if the awareness is quite in, yet it's still out, there's trouble driving a car or riding a motorbike. If awareness is in and out a fair bit, driving a car and riding a motorbike is okay. Otherwise, it's too dangerous, because there's nobody here to drive. And if awareness is too in, there's just not enough out here to make it so.
So when you go to sleep, is awareness all the way in?
Yes. I shut my eyes and go into the blackness. Awareness goes into the blackness. And then when I wake up in the morning, when the mind wakes up out of the blackness, pristine, ping.
So is there a difference when you go to sleep at night and going in then versus when you're just sitting and going in?
Not really. Same. What do I say? Gate, gate, paragate, gone, gone, gone beyond.
The next question. What qualities or characteristics of a seeker facilitate doing the work?
Enthusiasm. There has to be a willingness. If a seeker is not willing to do the work, they will not achieve anything. But that goes for everything we do in life. If there's not a willingness to do what it takes to make it so, it usually doesn't happen. And that's definitely the case in higher consciousness and enlightenment. The work has to be done. So what's important is that enthusiasm, which quite often comes from a thirst for freedom, a thirst to wake up, a thirst for truth, a thirst for heart. And in that thirst, things get done, things get removed. We raise our consciousness levels. So a teacher, someone who's awake, basically is trying to fire up that thirst in people, really get it going, get it hot, so a person is willing to do whatever it takes to make it so. I like what Ramana Maharshi said about the thirst. He said the thirst for enlightenment in a human being needs to be like a man or a woman being held underwater, starving for air, trying to get air. I would agree. You give it your totality, you put nothing in front of it, you make the quest for truth first.
Next, Abay has a question.
Hello, Abay.
Hi, Vishrant.
Hi.
So, is there a difference between the higher consciousness we require to be successful in the material world and the one we require to attain super consciousness or enlightenment?
Yeah, there is a difference. In the material world, quite often we need to stand alone in resistance. In the spiritual world, we need to stand alone in surrender. And it's different in that one is holding on, resisting, whereas the other is letting go. One makes you bigger, better, and more powerful. The other makes you less than. And so in higher consciousness, as you go up in levels, you find there's less and less and less of you as an I. In lower consciousness, it's a little different. There tends to be more of you, the bigger, the better, and the more powerful ego. But they are similar in a lot of ways. They're similar in the totality that is required to make them work. So in the material world, whatever we're doing, whether it's sport or business, anything, art, dancing, it takes a certain totality to be really good at it. And in higher consciousness, it's the same. It takes totality. People who are willing to put the totality in, it works for them. The people who only do it partially, it doesn't work. The same as everything else. what the recipe for success has to include totality.
Okay, so it's the totality and being okay with letting go of things and such, anything or everything, say, right?
Well, the main thing that you have to let go of, Abe, is belief systems that keep you contracting when the expectations aren't met on those belief systems. And so the main work is undoing the mind, the great undoing of the mind that keeps you contracted and resistant to the world.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Vishrant.
Thank you, Abe. People can self-inquire till the cows come home and find themselves as beingness. But if they haven't got a mind that is prepared to support what is found, the mind will keep drawing awareness back to itself, and they'll just flip-flop and flip-flop and flip-flop. The mind needs to be able to support enlightenment. And it doesn't do that by constantly contracting because it doesn't agree with the way the world's running.
Right. Even I feel like even to do the self-inquiry, there's a level of restfulness we need in the mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, an uptight mind doesn't work.
So the best way is to be present to the moment and
Best way is to learn how to rest, but if you self-inquire for long enough, the mind becomes quite restful, because in self-inquiry, we're keeping awareness on what is real. And so the mind can relax. It gets uptight because of its dreams, its projections, it's angsting about the future and the past. In self-inquiry, the mind starts to relax, so it gets itself into the right place for awareness to turn on to itself.
Right. And the projections are because we have a comparison from the past. Is it so?
Oh, look, it's just human nature to project, really, to try to work out what's going to happen next. It's how the survival mechanism of the mind works. It's just that it's not required. You just keep inquiring who's aware and follow the awareness. Let awareness find itself.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vishrant. Thank you.
Thank you.
The following question is from a viewer. Is the mind still intact when the body dies?
Tosh, I can't hear you. You started asking me a question.
I'll try again. Is the mind still intact when the body dies?
My experience of death is that there's awareness that is still intact when the body dies. Having had a few, I think 3 or 4 near-death experiences in this life, the mind seems to just go into a restful place, and awareness is still there. There's just pure awareness. But beyond that, I don't know the answer. We'll find out. Memories of what's happened before may or may not be accurate. I don't trust them. I trust silence and I trust stillness, which means I have to say I don't know.
The next question is from a viewer. Is the experience of deep sleep similar to superconsciousness? From the mind's perspective, sleep is for the weak.
Can you ask that question again? It broke up a bit for me at my end and I didn't get it.
Is the experience of deep sleep similar to superconsciousness?
It is, in that there's an absence of the I, but in deep sleep, there's no awareness of itself. So there is just basically unconsciousness again. In someone who's awake, there is a sense of awareness, aware of itself. There's a sense of something there. But in human beings who are not awake, who are ego-based, deep sleep is a very unconscious state. It's just black. It's very restful. And everybody goes there every night about 3 to 5 times. And they're so worried about dying. But in that place, the ego is dead. The mind, the ego is dead because it's not there. It's gone, it's gone, it's gone. But as a meditator, if you meditate long enough, you discover no mind. And then you look, well, you come out of no mind and you look and you go, well, I was there, but there was no thinking. So if there was no thinking, I can't be the thinker. There was just something there that was aware. So what's this that's aware? And the quest is really to find that is aware. Go into practice self-inquiry, find self as truth, and see for yourself. The questions and the answers don't help you. What helps you is your own direct knowing.
So then what is the point of you answering all these questions?
To try to fire up the thirst in you to get free, because that is the only way out of suffering.
The next question has been written by Tuli. Hi Vishrant. I too am training to be a psychotherapist. My question is, if I completely give myself to the heart that is now open, how will I work with people's stories in therapy?
As a psychotherapist, my job was to take stories off people because that's where they hurt themselves. The main story that people hurt themselves with is the story of being a victim of something, blaming someone or blaming themselves or blaming a situation. And so as a psychotherapist, to help people out of their suffering and out of their trouble, it was more like, let's take the stories apart, let's dismantle them. And that was done because I loved my clients. I didn't want to see them suffering. They'd come to me because they wanted to stop. But I found the hardest thing was to take victim-orientated thinking off them, because people hang on to it because they consider it a part of their identity. But that is the work, to take the story off people that is hurting them. And so they can actually rest. Because if we haven't got a story, we can rest. We can be at peace.
The next question is from Jennifer. Lately, I've been playing with the practice of continually coming back to the moment. I have a suspicion that if I can keep reining myself back into the moment as it is, it will lead me to the next moment, then the next, and all will unfold as it should as I rise to each moment. There is an element of trust involved to this experiment, that all will come right if I can keep bringing myself back to presence. All will unfold. My path and next steps will reveal themselves as I stay more in the moment. Is this a belief or is there truth in it?
There's hope in it. There's hope that all will be right, and hope is a deadly sin because it keeps you in a future projection away from the moment. The moment is now. Hope is all future projection. We don't know if things are going to go our way or not go our way. But if we can be okay with it going bad or going good, then we can rest. Then we can truly be in the moment. While we're projecting that we hope it is going to turn out okay, we're actually lost in a future projection. What about making whatever appears okay? What about that? What about instead of endgaming for a positive result, what about being okay with whatever appears? Because then you can rest in that. You can never rest in hope because hope always has another side. It's a two-sided coin. On hope that something will work out, there is the other side that is the fear that it will not. If we can be okay with whatever appears, we can then be free.
The next question has been written by Vanita. Adyashanti says that some people stay in restfulness where the mind rests in heart, and this is beautiful. But one should not stop there and the search for truth should go on. Can you please comment?
Yeah, look, when you come across either your own heart and you can rest in it, or you come across someone who's very hearty and it allows you to rest in that space as well, that is very beautiful. But in a way, that is also a waiting ground. It's not enlightenment. I watched this happen around Osho Rajneesh for years. People resting in the energy field, resting in the beauty of heart. But what happens? It doesn't include enlightenment. It doesn't include you knowing who you are. And so heart is very beautiful, and the way of the heart is very beautiful. But if you truly, truly into the way of the heart, you've learned that what surrenders is the mind, and it gives itself to heart. And in that giving itself to heart, it dies. But the same deal goes for truth. You can't just rest in heart. You then need to go for truth. You need to go for who you truly are. And in the love affair with truth, the mind, the I, becomes willing to lie down, becomes willing to surrender unconditionally. And in that unconditional surrender, enlightenment can occur. But just resting in heart is the mind making itself feel good. It can become another addiction for the mind. And the ego could rest there and go, oh, I like this. But what about truth? What about who you really are? Find self as truth. This is freedom. Finding yourself resting in heart is very beautiful, but it's not the same freedom as enlightenment.
The next question is from Leo. Vishrant, are we going to meet or have we already met?
Leo, I know a few Leos actually. You're not the only one. And have we met? I don't know. From my perspective, I don't know anybody that is separate from me. Everybody is self. And so, have we met? We are one. How can we have not met? Ultimately, that is true. But have we met physically as human beings in these spacesuits, I don't know. From my perspective, I'm always talking to myself.
The next question is from Ritu. There are so many preparations and exercises to prepare the mind for enlightenment. How do we know which exercise is right for us, or how to choose the right practice?
Okay. So let's look at openness as a practice. It's the only practice or spiritual practice that can't be used and defeated by the ego. Because in true openness, there is no ego. And so the practice of openness creates a mind that will support enlightenment. Openness counts for everything. In openness, we find heart and love. In openness, we heal the wounds of our heart. In openness, the mind is ready to support enlightenment. Openness counts for everything.
The next question has been written by Manasa. Why is that despite practicing yoga and meditation for 20 years, there's anger, ego, greed, and jealousy?
Because the mind hasn't been undone. The practice of meditation takes you to what is real. The practice of yoga opens you up. The asanas open you up. But has the mind been undone? Had the belief systems that support anger because their expectations haven't been met, have they been undone? Have you actually done the work on your mind, or have you concentrated on other things? In witnessing the mind, which is Osho's main technique towards enlightenment, you get to see how the mind operates. And when you see it as being detrimental, you stop it. But that's because you've seen it, because you've been witnessing it, not because you've been doing something else, but because you see it all. It's like when you see you're banging your head on the wall, you stop because you see it. Yoga is wonderful. I love yoga. Meditation is wonderful. I love meditation. But undoing the mind is essential. You can't keep holding belief systems that are going to contract you against the world and think that somewhere you're going to become enlightened. All those contractions keep awareness locked on the mind. The mind needs to be undone. It needs to be prepared to support enlightenment. And so you do what you need to do to take away every belief system that contracts you until there's nothing left to contract you, until you have a mind that's equanimous. Now, this is the work. This is the work. Some people think the work is self-inquiry. No, that's part of the work. The other part of the work is preparing the mind to support what is found.
The next question is from Sienna. What question is itself an answer?
I have absolutely nothing. Just nothing. Hang on, a little bit more of the same. Nothing.
The next question has been written by Kelly. I feel heavy in the head when observing the mind. It's like all the energy is clustered in the head. Is there anything I did wrong or any solution to ease the situation?
I think you're just observing what is already there that you have been unaware of before. If you keep witnessing the mind, you get to see its play. You get to see how it produces energy. You get to see how it produces contraction. You get to see how it is in the way. So watching the mind is a brilliant thing to do because your consciousness levels rise. And the more your consciousness levels rise, the less likely you are to get involved in contraction, in resistance to the world. The more likely you are to let things go. And the more likely you are to respond instead of react. So just keep witnessing the mind. I think you're just becoming aware of what is already there.
The next question has been written by Alberto. Is it possible to be awake or enlightened and be prone to smoking or have some external or internal defect? Thank you.
Well, we've got to look back at Nisargadatta. He smoked. If you want to change your habits and your patterns, do it before enlightenment. Because after enlightenment, there's not much interest in changing anything. Because there's profound contentment for no reason. And so whatever habits or patterns you have before awakening, you're likely to have after awakening, unless they've already been undone. Change it before you wake up if you want it changed. For me, coming up in consciousness levels, everything just dropped away by itself anyway. Smoking had dropped away 10 years before, 20, 15 years before, something like that. Drinking dropped away 4 or 5 years before. It all just dropped away as consciousness levels rose. Because it was seen for what it was, mostly just escapism. And the thing about higher consciousness is escapism is not the answer. The willingness to be with whatever appears is the answer. The willingness to be tenderly okay with whatever appears. And so all the escapes that you've been using are dropped away.
How has enlightenment affected your own mind over the past 22 years?
It's definitely less functional. It's absolutely silent most of the time. It doesn't react. It will respond. The mind is resting in beingness, profoundly content for no reason.
Did your perception of love change after enlightenment?
My understanding of love changed a little bit. I got to realize that love is not personal, that there is love, and love has one function, and that is to love. It just loves, and that there's no personal love really. The I can say I love, but the I itself is not real. It's a figment of its own imagination. And it's not, because it's not real, it can't really own love, because love is real. Love is here and love is real. But the mind, particularly the I, is just made up. It's just not real. But it likes to think that it can claim things. It likes to think that it can own things. So it claims ownership of something that is real. But something that's not real cannot claim ownership of something that is real. It's like the I claiming beingness. That's an impossibility as well. The I is just a computer-generated idea of a somebody made up of reference points from the past projected to the future and a few belief systems that is not real.
Did it become easier for you to feel the pain of other people after becoming enlightened?
Yeah, I feel everything. As the defenses that stop us from feeling drop away, you feel everything. In openness, you feel everything. The reason people don't tend to feel that much is because they're too closed. They're too defended. They develop defense systems probably beginning in the womb of their mother, and then developed them further as time went by to protect themselves from feeling discomfort, from pain. But in enlightenment, you open right up. Everything opens up, and you get to feel a great deal more. The reason that awake people teach is because they feel the suffering of the world, and they want to, in some way, help. And ultimately, the best way is to know yourself as truth, to wake up. And then you become a light so others may see. That's what enlightenment, in a lot of ways, is about. Being a light so others may see. Satsang offers clarity, allows you to see. There's a Buddha field in Satsang that expands the mind, allows it to relax, creates a space for clarity. People are so lost in dream that they don't realize they're even lost. Satsang and those that hold satsang are trying to enlighten the world, and so people can stop suffering, so people can be free, so people can know themselves as truth, who they truly are, rather than the false one that thinks it's been somewhere, thinks it's going somewhere, because that's not who you are. You are all pure awareness. You cannot possibly be anything else. You're already at your final destination. Find a way to turn awareness back to itself and know this as truth. Thank you for Satsang. Good to see you brave hearts here today.